More details are emerging about the immigration raid at a California cannabis farm last week. New numbers released by Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem show that 319 illegal migrants were arrested and 14 children were rescued. Christina Coleman is here with the latest. Hello, Christina.
Hi, Mike. Yes, that's right. We're learning more and more about that large raid that was conducted here at 2 marijuana farms in Southern California. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says a total of 319 illegal aliens were arrested during the operation. CBP sources tell Fox News that it's the largest worksite enforcement raid of the current Trump administration. DHS law enforcement says they faced assaults, violence, and even bullets fired at them during the raid, but they were still able to rescue 14 children from potential forced labor, exploitation, and trafficking during this large immigration sweep. Again, 319 illegal aliens were arrested, including this man. CBP says he's a felon who was sentenced to 7 years for kidnapping and attempted rape, with a prior conviction for attempted child molestation. They also noted that this man was working at the very same farm as some of the children who were rescued, including one who was just 14 years old. DHS says assaults against ICE officers continue to be a big problem. They say they are up nearly 700% compared to the same time last year, but it's not stopping some on the left from trying to keep ICE agents from wearing masks during the raids and slamming the fact that they continue to do so. Take a listen.
The administration is using federal immigration agents as a tool to instill fear and to instill division. Agents are wearing masks. They're driving unmarked vehicles. They're dressing in plain clothes and refusing to identify themselves when asked, making it difficult to distinguish them from criminals.
And Senate Democrats Alex Padilla and Cory Booker introduced controversial legislation requiring ICE agents and CBP officers to display clear, visible identification during the raids and other immigration enforcement actions. Former acting ICE Director Jonathan Fahey says their proposed legislation would put law enforcement lives at risk.
It's entirely nonsense and just an effort to continue to demonize ICE and ICE agents. I think the important point is the reason they are masked is because if their identities were revealed, they and their families would be put in danger.
And after all of that violence against DHS law enforcement last week, President Donald Trump says he has given federal immigration agents total authorization to protect themselves by whatever means necessary against these violent rioters and anyone who tries to attack them and come after them as they carry out immigration enforcement. Mike?
Christina Coleman live in Los Angeles. Christina, thanks very much. For more, let's bring in today's political panel, the Vice President of COIN, Cassie Smedley, and former DNC Chief of Staff Jaime Moore. Welcome to both of you.
Hey, Mike.
Great
Good
to
see
be
you
here.
So let's start with President Trump talking about his illegal immigration crackdown, and I'll get you to react to it. Here's the president.
That's a big job, getting thousands, hundreds of thousands of criminals out of our country, murderers. 11,888 murderers. Many of those people have killed more than one person. Think of it. Murderers kill more than one person, more than half of them. And he let them into our country. It's not even, we love this country.
How do you respond, Jaime?
Look, I mean, I think a couple of things, Mike. When you think about where we are right now in the immigration sort of crackdown, when we look back at 2024 and look back at the last couple of elections, President Trump has been very clear about what he was going to do to approach this. I think what's been unclear is who he's going to target. One of the things he said in last year's election is he's going to look at criminals, those who are the most violent. And we've seen some of that over the last couple of weeks, couple of months. But what we've seen is people who are not in that category be targeted. I think some Democrats, independents, and some Republicans have an issue with those individuals being targeted. When you think about comprehensive immigration reform, I don't think the president's talking about that. He's talking about getting as many people out as possible, which is still popular with some voters, so you have to say that too. But I think the way he's doing it is a little bit confusing and it's causing some uncertainty.
Legal immigration in this country is very, very popular. After all, we are a nation of immigrants. What about illegal immigration, Cassie?
Very unpopular, not only amongst those who immigrated here legally, but amongst voters right now who saw their communities that they once took for granted as being safe communities now seeing increased crime rates, now seeing increased issue of illegals being a part of their community and having nefarious activity. And that is reflected in the polling. And as President Trump said right there in the interview last night, this is an issue we're talking about today because of the Democrats' open border policies. That's why we've had an influx of millions of people into our country. In the example that we saw just last week of the cannabis plant in California, they were there to carry out a warrant against a criminal illegal alien. And then there are other people that they see once they're there. And they have said that, to be very clear, if you're in this country illegally and we come across you while doing our other business and the priority of rounding up criminal illegal aliens, you're going to be part of the process as well. And I think most Americans agree with that.
President Trump is pressing the Senate to act this week on a clawback package codifying DOGE cuts. He talked about it on True Social. Quote, "It's very important that all Republicans adhere to my rescissions bill, and in particular to fund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, PBS and NPR, which is worse than CNN and MSDNC put together. Any Republican that votes to allow this monstrosity to continue broadcasting will not have my support or endorsement. Thank you for your attention to this matter." Jaime, what are the politics of this issue?
Look, I mean, I think in a lot of politics, Mike, here the first and most important thing is Americans did not send President Trump back to D.C. to do that. I think they sent President Trump back to D.C. to lower their costs, to make their lives a little bit safer and better. And so when we talk about NPR and talk about the public broadcast, that's not an issue people have a problem with. And so I think what Democrats are saying right now is President Trump has used these DOGE cuts to wage some political wars. That's not fair and it's not appropriate. And so I think overwhelmingly, President Trump still has support of many voters and many Americans. But when you look at these sort of little pet projects, I don't think he's going to, those are not winning issues. And for him, it's okay because he's a lame duck president. When we talk about Congress in 2026 and the Republicans wanting to maintain the White House in 2028, these are issues that are going to be really, really salient for those elections.
Cassie, what do you expect in the Senate?
Well, I think one issue that is really important to the American people is spending, is debt. DOGE as this concept was very popular because there is this sense that there's all of this unnecessary spending happening in Washington. And yes, if that pertains to public broadcasting, most people get their news and information in other areas. They're not the old argument from the Democrats that this is what you need for rural communities to get information. It's just not true anymore. And from a personal standpoint, they love to trot out the pictures of Elmo. I have 2 toddlers at home. We do not use public broadcasting to watch Elmo. Every parent knows that. So I think most people see that this is even a low-hanging fruit area where you can do some cleaning up and shore up some spending.
Cassie, Jaime, great to have you both. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.